Hello, everybody. Welcome back for another dispatch. It is a gray day. It started out sunny. It is now gray. That's okay. A little overcast. A little unseasonably warm for not even mid-February. Well, we're back with Get the Picture, the introduction. I've kept reading. I'm now in chapter 4. She's talking about her experience of the machine, the term for the New York City art world. It's good. I mean, she nails it. I'm curious where she's going in there's a lot of book here to go. I hope she doesn't just get stuck in the New York City art world. I mean, it's okay. It's okay. It's just. All right. So, onward. Moderation has never been my strong suit. And once I got the itch for art, I cannonballed in. I thought art might inject beauty into my blah routine, wash away from the soul the dust of everyday life, as Picasso supposedly said it could. My awakening was rude. I know I'm not supposed to admit this, but between you and me, a lot of the art I saw was barely recognizable as art. In the hushed halls of a renowned art museum, I beheld a giant stuffed bear with horns and a nose ring and felt my heart go out to a mutilated chair. I spent a particularly disorienting evening at Bridget Donahue, a Lower East Side gallery my detective work had revealed to be the womb of all things cool. At the gallery's opening, I squeezed past neckbeards and ironic tube socks to squint at a plasticky black seagull dangling ankle height on a string. Alcohol helps, volunteered a guy next to me. It didn't. I stayed long enough to catch a performance by the artist, a burly middle-aged man who paddled out into the gallery in a Snow White costume, climbed halfway up a metal ladder, and started mumbling into a microphone about an animatronic goat trapped in an inflatable bush of cooked pubic hair. I don't know what else to tell you about the art. It was there. I was there. I knew enough not to utter the two phrases guaranteed to brand me a lowbrow loser. But is it art? And a 5-year-old could do that. But beyond that, I stared at it and got nothing but the familiar feeling that everyone got the punchline except me. I mean, was art just whatever people with expensive graduate degrees said it was? What made it good? Were those stupid questions? What did these geniuses nodding thoughtfully at the world's worst Snow White impersonator know that I didn't? I stalked artists on Instagram, scoured art blogs, subscribed to every newsletter I could find, and forced myself to make small talk with strangers at art openings. I went to art talks, art shows, art museums, and art galleries, which is a fancier way of saying art stores. I hit up every remote acquaintance vaguely connected with art to catch up over coffee, then pelted them with questions. But all over town, the art refused to speak to me. It sat there, smug and withholding, whispering an inside joke to everyone but me. Try a simpler hobby, I encouraged myself. Bake bread, pickle. And it was tempting, really it was. Only I couldn't stop thinking I had to be missing out on something major because the art I was seeing inspired such extremes of devotion on the part of not only viewers who do things like hawk a car to buy a painting, but also the artists themselves. I knew artists had a centuries-old reputation for being masochistic obsessives who'd sell a kidney for a tube of paint, but that looked relatively painless compared to what I was witnessing. I met artists who skipped meals, sleep, surgeries, having kids, seeing dying parents, and putting a roof over their heads in order to pour every last drop of themselves into making their work, with no end in sight except the art itself. Our relationship ended because he was really concerned about the future of our finances, and I was really concerned about the future of my paintings, said one painter who had uprooted her life in Georgia to move to New York. Not for a lover or a job or friends, but because, as she put it, she wanted to be where all the paintings were. Most artists I met were working at least two jobs, and their art lived better than they did, sleeping soundly in the studio while they woke up on a friend's couch covered in cat pee. And for what? Beyond the handful of acquaintances they convinced to come to their studios, their art rarely got seen. They had to do mental math to decide if they could afford a bagel. And the advice they got was to give up now. Yet they kept giving everything they had to make objects that were supposed to show us something, communicate something, do something. And it drove me crazy that, despite a long relationship with art and a very expensive education, I couldn't clearly discern what that was. I'd never met a group of humans willing to sacrifice so much to create something of so little obvious practical value. With all due respect to my grandmother, I'd always thought of art as a luxury. I mean, it can't clothe you, feed you, or be used to kill predators. But when I asked artists why they made art, they made it sound like I'd asked them why they eat food. There's like zero other choice. Or it's just natural, like how I have black hair. And because I feel like if I don't pay attention to that, it will kill me. Being an artist wasn't a choice, it seemed. As a sculptor friend of a friend told me over dinner one night, the people who are canonized, it's not because they're great artists, but because it's life or fucking death for them. You might be thinking that all sounds a bit much, but then you, like me, might be surprised to learn that scientists are right. That scientists are right there with artists in insisting art is fundamental to being human. Art is one of our oldest creations. Humans invented paint long before the wheel. One of our earliest communication, one of our earliest means of communication. We drew long, long, long before we could write. And one of our most universal urges, we all engage with art, whether preschoolers, Parisians, or Paleolithic cave dwellers. I began to notice that art, or what scientists dispassionately call human-made, two or three dimensional structures that remain unchanged, was everywhere. Hung over the register at the hardware store, spray painted on a bakery window, cockeyed in a dive bar bathroom. As humans, we've filled our lives with art since practically forever. The earliest known paintings, the earliest known painting keeps getting older, but the last time I checked, archaeologists had traced the oldest portrait to a cave in Indonesia where, around 45,000 years ago, artists put their finishing touches on a fat figure with purple testicles for a chin. In other words, before Neanderthals went extinct, before mammoths died out, before we figured out how to harvest food or heal bloody wounds, humans applied themselves to painting the portrait of a warty pig. It is clear that the creation of beautiful and symbolic objects is a characteristic feature of the human way of life, wrote the biologist J. Z. Young. They are as necessary to us as food or sex. I, for one, didn't feel the necessity of art in the way I felt my stomach growl for for a juicy burger. But reading that only made me more curious to experience whatever soul-rattling epiphany supposedly lurked in a sculpture of a dirty mattress. I kept trekking to art shows. Should I pause? Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna get. I'll keep reading for a while, but I don't know if we're gonna get through the intro. Okay, but it's good. I kept trekking to art shows, hoping to be moved, and while the art didn't do it for me, the humans around it fascinated me. Like people who join cults or travel to space, art connoisseurs had the peculiar aura of the transformed. They'd seen things that would blow your mind. Whatever it was had to be some heady stuff because their reality bucked all the usual laws of nature. People held vicious grudges against the color blue or got breast implants and called it artwork. They got really excited about being really uncomfortable and took classes on pretending to be sequins. These artists frowned on my idea of beauty. There was beauty, one insisted, in a grotesque medley of there was beauty, one insisted, in a grotesque medley of chopped dildos glued to a canvas. More than that, they insisted my search for beauty was pitifully off base. Beauty is my fucking nemesis, spat a sculptor in one of many lectures I'd get on the evils of the B word. They also had very different ideas about what was a valuable way to spend one's time. A big part of my practice at home, said one, is examining the garbage there and both being repulsed and inspired by it. It was thrilling, or maybe it was bullshit. Either way, my life looked drained of color by comparison. My days were efficient. Theirs seemed expansive, like they'd accessed a trap door in their brains. Should I live that way? Could I? Art connoisseurs insisted I couldn't afford not to. They pitied me. They said I lacked visual literacy, which they swore was downright dangerous in a world so saturated with pictures. After all, there's probably no time in history when we've been inundated with so many images. In the Middle Ages, we might have stared at the same pained portrait of Jesus on a church altar week after week, year after year. But now, images crowd us when we check Instagram, throw them throw themselves in our paths from billboards, and leer at us from packs of frozen peas, all hoping to exert influence. The people I was meeting worshipped the idea of an I, EYE, by which they didn't mean the organ, but a painstakingly cultivated outlook that allegedly enables you to see lots that doesn't meet the eye. Like, who'll be the next Picasso? Or what's transcendent about a middle-aged man climbing up a ladder to lecture about burnt pubes? I hit the books. I read memoirs, investigations, biographies, and histories. I learned that art museums evolved out of aristocrats' palaces and that Piero Manzoni canned his own shit for a sculpture. But what I didn't learn was why. Why bother with art? Everything I read started with the assumption that art was important. And if I didn't know why, too bad. One of the best things about art is that it doesn't have to appeal to everyone, said one critic dismissively in an article that maintained the problem with art isn't that it's too elitist, but that it's not elitist enough. It's been a little while here. I guess I should. I'm going to pause. Otherwise, it just will keep going for too long. But one more paragraph. Okay. I took some comfort in the fact that I wasn't the only person I knew who could rub two brain cells together and yet was baffled by contemporary art, as in art made by artists living right now. Though technically the words modern and contemporary are synonymous, the term modern art counterintuitively refers to an older art generally made between the 1860s and 1970s, whereas contemporary art refers to everything that follows. I started to think that someone needed to get in there and ask some fundamental questions about how art works, then explain it to the rest of us. And I started to wonder if that someone could be me. All right, I'm going to pause there. She tries to get work, tries to get connections, get into, anyway, she manages. And then she starts in her journey into the New York City art world. It's good. So that's where I am in here, and then we'll see where it goes. Okay, it's time to go paint something. Okay, hope you're all well, making stuff. Take care.